Good evening all. I thought last week was quite good fun looking at some Paul Morphy games. Let's take away the echo. Okay, so I thought this week we could carry on a little bit with Paul Morphy because his games seem to be quite instructive. Okay, so the first game I'd like to check out actually is let's take it from the start of my list. I'll just put it on. Against Adolf Anderssen, who was another great attacking player. So this is in 1858. Let's have a look at this one. This is a classic game. So I think last week was very good fun. So let's see. Hopefully it's going to be cool this time. So Paul Morphy playing white plays e4, and we've got some notes here actually by Lermerthal, who was a very strong player as well at the time. So Sicilian defence, and we see Paul Morphy playing d4, but it's not with the idea of playing the Morris Smith Gambit, which is to play c3 now. Instead it's just the delayed knight f3, which kind of tempts black maybe to weaken some light squares. If, well, e5 might be possible here, because if taking we've got check, but e5 positionally is weakening like these light squares, so this might be undesirable. So black perhaps wisely just protected the pawn like this, allowing it to be taken with knight takes d4. So it's a kind of standard, more standard Sicilian defense. So we have e6 now, and this looks like a very modern Sveshnikov maneuver now. This knight b5, just probing that d6 square. d6, bishop f4. Something has to be done about d6. Black plays e5. Bishop drops back. Now, it almost, I think, transposed into almost the Sicilian Sveshnikov under certain circumstances, this position. If black played knight f6, I'm thinking in particular. But black played f5, which does suffer from this diagonal being weakened. It's a bit of a risky double-edged move, to say the least, to play f5 here. If black can succeed in gaining a central pawn majority, then that would be great. But this diagonal is a big downside. So can Paul Morphy exploit this diagonal? Okay, how will he exploit it? And also black might be preparing just to gain space as well with f4, but it does relieve the tension. Well, white just plays now knight 1 to c3. And in fact, black now actually plays f4. And the notes on this game, if a6 had been played, then actually we don't need to perhaps retreat this knight like you would in kind of Sicilian Sveshnikov type position, because actually knight d5, according to Lermerthal at least, is a very strong move. Let's have a quick look. A takes bishop b6, and it looks nasty for this c7 square. So okay, a6 wasn't bothered with though. This move f4, but again, knight d5 is still a strong move here, it seems, and it is played knight d5, just going into that c7 square for a dangerous check, offering the entire bishop. So f takes e3, knight b c7 check. Okay, and the king is very dangerously placed. If king d7, I think that runs into just queen g4 looks good. That's mate. Ouch. So the king is forced to go to f7 here on that sensitive diagonal. But now queen f3 check. Knight f6. And bishop c4 finally directly using that diagonal. The attack now is irresistible according to Lermerthal. Knight d4 attacking the queen. Knight takes f6, discovered check. d5. And now bishop takes d5 check. And king g6 is played here. I think it's a hopeless position. Had the queen captured the bishop, let's have a quick look at these notes here. Then knight takes, and after knight takes f3, this is a pawn up anyway, which should be winning for white, but that's black's best continuation, to play queen takes d5, but he didn't. He wanted the game to end quite quickly, it seems. So he plays king g6, and of course the king has had it here. Check, and okay, just f takes e3 calmly, just using this f file. That was decisive. This is very dangerous, too dangerous for black. So black tries knight c2 check, and we see king e2, and here with all these threats on the board, in particular this f file, black resigned. White is also now threatening, well, the main thing is this f file, I would say. Okay, so black resigned here. So what did we get from this game, this very short game? I think it emphasised that f5 was a bit dubious, with the idea of f4. So Morphy had really punished black from this position, using this knight d5 tactic to dislodge the king, kick the king about football. So let's have a look at another game. Okay, so now this is a Morphy against Paul Morphy against Ernest Morphy, who is Morphy's uncle actually. So this is way back in 1850 in New Orleans. So he's playing his uncle here. So Ernest Morphy playing black, Paul playing white. He plays e4, his uncle plays e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, and we don't get a stodgy kind of opening. We get the Evans Gambit, b4, named after sea captain Evans. So bishop takes b4, and white is constructing this centre quite rapidly. Bishop a5, d4, e takes d4, white castles here. Bishop takes c3, knight takes c3, d takes, bishop a3, trouble ahead, this diagonal. And although black can block the diagonal for a moment, white's going to be playing e5 shortly. First he plays queen b3, eyeing f7. That's protected. Queen takes c3 now, eyeing g7. And actually this gets a little bit tricky now. Black tries in this position actually the move queen f6. I assume that if black castles here, actually white's still got a very good position, and perhaps bishop b2 is to be a major worry if black has to give up a pawn with queen f6, because that pawn's pinned. So okay, black maybe thought this was a lesser evil idea to play queen f6 here, but now e5, d takes, and the king's stranded there for a moment, but black's got a plan here to castle queenside with bishop d7. Paul Morphy points at the king now in its new location if it does castle queenside, which it does. And now actually I have engine checked, believe it or not, some of these games tonight, and believe it or not, from an engine point of view, it looks a little bit dangerous, this king on c8. Mind you, I'm not saying a huge depth of analysis, but white's next move, although it's a good looking move, it might not necessarily be winning. Maybe black didn't play the best defense, but can you spot a great move in the circumstance of this position if I give you 20 seconds starting from now. What would you play with the white pieces here? So 20 seconds starting from now. Anyone? Any ideas? Come on, throw out some moves. What would you play here with white? Okay, someone suggested rook takes b7. I'm not sure that works, actually. Although it does seem as though it should expose the king. Let's have a quick look. My engine, when I did analysis on this game, didn't mention it, actually. I'm not sure, for example, here, how white would continue. You know, we've always got this rook b8. So anyway, Morphy's move is to do with b7. He played actually bishop a6. So he's really opening up this line fully, this b line. Now, if black does take here, but I only found with an engine a draw here earlier, actually, after queen b3. Black's best idea, it seems, is not knight b4, but bishop g4. And we'll get a perpetual check kind of scenario here. Like this, knight takes e5, knight takes, check. And a kind of perpetual check scenario. So it's good for a perpetual check, it seems, but not. It doesn't. I didn't find an absolute definite win in this variation with bishop g4. But in the game, actually, sorry, after taking in this position, bishop g4 seems to be a good defense. But in the game, actually, after bishop a6, his uncle actually played knight a5, which might not be the best defense. Now, of course, there'll be a transaction. If queen takes, then queen takes here, maybe. I hope that's right. So that's the idea, that this bishop is attacked. But Morphy actually attacks now to threaten mate, and the bishop goes in front there. But now queen takes a5 is very dangerous for black, so black is losing material now. It's much worse than the other variation. After takes, check, we've got a king hunt, and in fact immediately crushing here is the next move. Can you spot it? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now, what would you play here with white? Anyone? Okay. I think the most crushing move is this rook takes c6 as played, because now if queen takes, then we've got this lovely knight fork. So the king queen forked, so it's a very nice tactic. Rook takes c6. So these forcing moves, you know, they're very critical. You can win a lot of games looking at the forcing moves. So I think that's one of the big things about the Morphy games. He was very, very good at finding forcing combinations. So rook takes c6. Black's had it. His uncle's had it. He plays queen f5, attacking the rook. Okay. But Morphy finishes quite cutely with rook takes c7. So he's going for the checkmate now. Queen c6 check. It's all over really. And instead of taking the queen here, which obviously wins, this also wins. Rook b8. So we saw a game actually last week where Morphy leaves his queen to be taken, so he gets this mating attack. Well, here, I mean, he's leaving his queen to be taken, and it's a forced mate like this. Rook takes d8. Black carried on with queen e8 for that mate. So in this game, the Evans Gambit used with some success by Morphy, this b4. It's very interesting. So we also get the idea, you know, he really does like his gambits for opening up the lines, and he's very, very good to back that up with finding forcing moves and combinations as well. So a very aggressive, dynamic approach to the game. So let's have a look at another game. So James Mcconnell against Paul Morphy. So in 1849, New Orleans. Okay. James Mcconnell against Mcconnell. Scottish, sounds Scottish. Mcconnell against Paul Morphy. So e4, e5. And we see King's Gambit played by James Mcconnell. That's taken. Knight f3. We see g5. Bishop c4. And this nice move, bishop g7. Positionally, you know, black's control of the centre is quite good here with this fianchettoed bishop. And especially g4 can also be used to undermine d4 further at some point. d3, h6. White castles. Now this move, knight pardon me, knight f6 is played here, not knight ge7. So black is interested in a quick d5 to challenge this bishop. Or is he? After c3, in fact, perhaps an even more aggressive idea is played in this position to counter Gambit now with b5. And similar actually to the Evans Gambit in reverse, the construction of the centre is made very quick, because after bishop takes we see a quick c6 and d5 now. Constructing that centre very quickly is another trademark of Morphy. So, you know, open lines, quick central control, forcing moves. It's a brilliant combination of things to have. So he's getting that central control now. Challenge with d5, ed, cd. Check. It doesn't really help this check because bishop e6. Bishop drops back. Black castles. Now this next move is very uncomfortable indeed for white. White's not enjoying a great gambit position here by any means. But this next move, d4, does weaken the e4 square and allows this very comfortably entrenched knight now, knight e4. After bishop c2, now f5, and it looks, you know, really quite a meaty position for black to have here with this huge knight on e4. Okay, knight bd2, knight c6. And you would think the last thing white wants to do is weaken the d4 square, but that's exactly what he does actually. He plays c4, so d4's dropping, bishop takes d4, check, that's taken, knight takes d4, queen d3, the queen protects the knight and now threatens this horrible discovered double check stuff on the king. So we see the king stepping out of the way, but now knight takes c2, queen takes c2, and the classic smothered mate combination, knight f2, which I hope everyone knows. Now, especially to everyone on play chess here, I see some ratings 1700, 1600, 1500. I'm hoping you'll all be able to spot this tactic coming up here. If I get this position, double check. This is a great one for your own game. So double check here. The king moves here. So what does black play in this position if I give you all 20 seconds starting from now? So this is a classic, what's called smothered mate combination. So what would you play with black in this position? Okay, so Pat MC. Anyone else? Does anyone else on PlayChess agree with Pat MC? So the smothered mate is running the king out of, escape squares. It's a great one if you ever get this sort of position with the queen and knight working well together. Okay, I hope you've seen it before, otherwise prepare to be a bit shocked then. So queen G1 check. Rock Lackid, are you shocked? Everyone's shocked? Have you seen this before? Queen G1. You see, how can white deal with this? There's only the rook takes. I hope you've seen it before. If not, great. If you've seen it for the first time, please say. That's interesting. So rook takes just leaves knight f2. Checkmate. There's no defender of f2. There's nowhere the king can go. It's a smothered mate combination. So he managed to get that. Okay. So just to rewind there. So we saw first that white's best was taking here, but he didn't. So we see the double check, and the knight supporting that queen to come in, and then we see the knight f2. Okay, so let's. I hope you might remember that, but let's look at some other games now as well. So now Paul Morphy played his father in this game, Alonzo Morphy, in 1848. So he's played his uncle, and now he's playing his father in these games, showing you these family games. So e4, Paul played, and Alonzo, his father, playing black. Some sources, by the way, indicate 1847. So e5, f4 against his dad, King's Gambit, that's taken. Bishop c4. Dad plays Queen h4. King steps to f1. Bishop c5. Wrestling mate. Paul spots that. d4. Bishop goes back. Knight f3, gaining time. Development time. Queen goes back to e7. Knight c3, threatening knight d5 now potentially. Knight f6. Queen d3, supporting that e4 pawn. c6. Bishop takes f4. So for the price of the king being on f1, this is not a bad position actually, because white's got this nice central control here. Everything's out, pieces are out. It's only the rooks that look to be suffering a bit in this position. Black plays d5, which is a bit risky with the king still in the centre. E takes, and now his dad makes it into a gambit with castling. And Paul doesn't play d takes c, but actually plays d6. Queen goes back. White's obviously doing very well here. Rook e1, rook e8, knight g5, probing that f7 square. Rook takes, king takes, check, king d2. This is a nice move because it means that the rook can come to e1 now. So f7 is still under fire. So we see his dad's trying to defend with bishop e6 for a moment. Rook e1, piling on the pressure on e6. Knight bd7. And now it's actually very, very bad news on this diagonal here after knight takes, f takes, rook takes e6. Now imagine, well, black actually resigned in this position. So if queen g6, what could white play in this position? I hope you can all spot the winning move. If I give you 20 seconds, starting from now. So what's the move which is which finishes the game. Anyone? Okay, Pat MC, yeah. You want to use the double check, so that's there's no defense to that double check. So it's a check from here, and it's actually checkmate. Okay, so he did play his dad, yeah, 1848. We've got the recorded games. Okay, so let's see, let's carry on. So against someone called Napoleon Marash next, going forward in time to 1857. So Napoleon Marash, playing white, plays e4. We see e5 from Paul Morphy. Knight f3 from Napoleon Marash. Knight c6. Bishop c4. Bishop c5. And now Paul Morphy finds himself on the end of the Evans Gambit. White plays b4. So it's a popular move at the time, this Evans Gambit. Bishop takes b4, c3, trying to construct that centre quickly with tempo. Bishop a5, d4. Paul takes. We see e5. But now he actually, gets this great share of central control with this next move, d5. It stops looking as though it's a great gambit for white pretty soon if black can get this central control going. So in this position, Napoleon Marash played e takes d6 en passant. Queen takes d6. White castles. Knight ge7. It's pretty crude back in those days. Knight g5 going for the f7. Black castles to defend f7 automatically. Now bishop d3 attacking h7. This is parried with bishop f5. And you might think there's a slight flaw with this bishop f5, which white's picked up on. He plays bishop takes f5 with an idea now to skewer the queen and rook. But is this such a bad position for black? Well, let's look like materially the pawn situation. White has 5 pawns, black has 7 pawns, so it'll be 2 pawns for the exchange, which is quite a lot. And in fact, maybe 3 pawns for the exchange, potentially. Queen g6, white takes the rook. Now queen takes g5, asking the bishop to leave, and is going to get 3 pawns for the exchange. So the bishop drops back, d takes c3, and look at white's central control. It's not very good. So 3 pawns for the exchange is quite a lot. Bishop c1, queen g6, bishop f4. Black plays rook d8, and black enjoys great central control. And look at this d4 square in a lot of Morphy games. He really does control the centre really firmly, assertively, especially d4 with black. So here is a vivid example of that. Queen c2, which goes into knight cd4 attacking the queen. And he may have thought his queen was safe with queen e4. But what does Morphy play here? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. If you want to play chess, by the way, please step away from the notation tab so we can make these quizzes more fun. So black to play. What does black play in this position? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. Oops. Okay. Karash. So, as mentioned, a move. Let's go with it. Well done. Okay, no one on stream is mentioning this move. So it's Playchess have 2 people that have mentioned this move. And anyone on Twitch have interest? Can you see the move? Oh, what? Is this difficult? Has the difficulty gone up on this? Anyone? Alright, well done play chess on this occasion. So the move is knight g3. The knight covers the h1 square. Ouch. The queen is being deflected away from e2. In the game we saw queen takes g6, knight de2, checkmate. Smothered mate. King can't go anywhere. Wow. So what we saw is the Evans Gambit being crushed by Paul Morphy. Crushed. How did he do this? How? He challenged the centre. He ripped apart White's central control for a start. He offered an exchange sacrifice, which turned out to be the exchange for 3 pawns. And you see the classic control of d4 evident in many of Morphy's games, how he gets this huge central control. And he goes for the king, but you see the crushing forcing moves, which are based on all these positional trump cards. Crushing forcing move, knight g3 for knight de2. So even if they play gambits against Morphy, they end up looking, where did the gambit go? It was supposed to be for white, the gambit, not for black. So let's have a look at another. So John William Shulton against Paul Morphy. So he plays e4. It's another one that wants to play gambit. So we see f4. And Morphy counter gambits. d5. He's breaking up white's centre. E takes e4. Morphy counter gambit. Knight c3, knight f6. This is not what a King's Gambit player wants generally, this sort of position. d3, bishop b4. It seems black's getting the nasty initiative now with this next move, which I've enjoyed very good results actually on Blitz, even against IMs, I think, and GMs even. I think I've beaten some GMs in this line. This is really quite dangerous for white. Does everyone know this? Out of interest, this bit of theory here, what does black play here? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now, to really disrupt white's position. So you want white to have none of the traditional advantages of playing a gambit. So what would you play in this position? Anyone? I think it's already at least equal for black. e3. It's horribly disruptive. It's forcing the bishop to move yet again. And there's this horrible knight d5 on the cards now, but black even delays that. So the bishop moves back again. He hasn't got anything from this gambit now. And black voluntarily now gives up the dark square bishop because he's got very, very fast initiative. Check. So fast it's absolutely getting crushing now after bishop g4. White dare not play a simple move like knight f3. It looks horrendous to have these double pawns after bishop takes. This just looks nasty, this sort of position. If white dared castle, it'll be in trouble. So actually white, in this position, decided to leave the knight on g1, protecting e2 instead, and play just c4. And as I mentioned, a trademark specifically about central control is that Morphy as black seems to get this d4 square going with black. And here, to get hold of that d4 square, he plays c6, offering a pawn. So d takes, knight takes c6. Look at that d4 square control. So menacing moves now are apparent. So king f1, a miserable move to play. And here we get the central control, the accelerated development, and the last thing thrown in the mix is a powerful sequence of combinational blows, usually with forcing moves. So what does black play here? A crushing blow now. If I give you 20 seconds starting from now, what does black play here? Anyone on Play Chess? What's a really powerful forcing move here? I'll give you a clue. You want to kind of create a nasty pin. Pin and win. Pin and win. Okay, so the move played is rook takes e2. So it's creating a really nasty pin, making use of that d4 square, which I mentioned is a trademark Morphy thing to capture the d4 square with black. Knight moving in, and e2 is indefensible here. Indefensible. So black is picking up great material. Check. And the king's being kicked around like football now. King g1. And in fact, a lovely forcing move here in this position from black, from Paul Morphy playing black. What does he play in this position to finish off things quickly? If I give you 20 seconds again here. Alright, now, yeah, if Queen h4, I think there's actually just, there's potentially, Bishop e1, does that hold off black for a bit? So Morphy's move is so much more crushing. It's knight f3 check. He's vacating the d4 square for this check. So taking, check, and the king's getting kicked around again. Check, check. Now knight h6 threatens queen g4 and stuff. Queen g1. There's also now knight f5 check. King g5 and queen h5 mate. So you can see, White wanted to play the King's Gambit against Morphy, and this counter gambit made it as though black is the one playing the gambit. Got all the central control, the lead in development, the control of d4 again with black, and the combination just flows after. The forcing moves just flow. Okay, so let's have a look at another game. So Paul Morphy against James Mcconnell this time, which I think we've seen the game just so this is very quick. E4, E5, and Paul plays the King's Gambit, and it's taken here. Knight F3, Bishop E7, which is actually quite an annoying move to get this check in. Sometimes it can be a very annoying move. Bishop C4, check, the king goes to F1. So a bit of disruption. D6, D4, and black tries to hold on to the F4 pawn now. E5, takes, Queen e7. Bishop takes f4. White's better now. What's this bishop doing over here? This knight, you know, if it goes here, you know, there's options and I like taking it. Bishop g4, knight c3, which has this horrible threat now of knight d5. Black plays c6. And believe it or not, after knight e4, Black didn't like his position much. Maybe you wouldn't expect this, but Black actually resigned here. And I did a quick engine check earlier on this position. And let's see. So I can give you an example, I think, of something which will be quite effective. If knight h6, there are at least 2 effective moves for white if this was played. So knight d6 check is one. So say king f8, bishop takes h6, g takes. Now I wonder if you can spot the move which an engine comes up with in this position, which is, I think, quite crushing. If I give you 20 seconds here, so this is a sideline of the game which never happened. What would white play here? This is quite crushing. What would you play here with white? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. This was another game played in New Orleans, by the way. I think Queen d2 isn't as effective as what the engine came up earlier with. I think on Queen d2 we might have actually Bishop g5, or, well, I think that might do. No, there's the move which was picked up was Queen d4. So it's really asking Black to give up the light square bishop here. And if Black gives up the light square bishop, and there's also might be threats like this as well, but if Black gives up the light square bishop, g takes, Black is left with this position where these two are major threats. So this is not very nice at all. For example, knight f5, or even knight takes f7 still. Knight takes f7 is pretty strong as well. Yeah, or knight f5. I think that might be good in this position as well, knight f5. Well, am I talking rubbish because of queen g5? But that's got queen g5 potentially on g2. So knight takes f7 might actually be more accurate. So Black's pretty done in here. There is a threat of knight takes h6 and then coming back for f5. So it keeps control of g5 here, just in case Black has got any counterplay. So anyway, so queen d, this idea of queen d4 here is powerful. But we didn't see any of this. This is just what if. So knight h6 in the game, actually after knight e4. Okay, it stops there in the game anyway. Okay, so let's have a look at another. So against Alexander Buford Meek. So did Meek play a bit too meekly? So e4, e5. Paul Morphy played f4. E takes, knight f3. And now we see g5. And with a very good idea of fianchettoing the bishop. So Alexander Meek playing black, fianchettos the bishop. And Paul Morphy tries to disrupt this pawn chain immediately with h4. We see g4. And now this knight g5. Knight h6. And Paul Morphy's knight is a bit stranded actually. After d4, in fact, black goes to win the knight with f6. But it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because he's compromised the diagonal in doing this. He's winning material at the expense of that diagonal. And white is also picking up potentially this h-file pressure. So Paul Morphy just plays bishop takes f4. Black takes that knight materialistically. And here actually Paul doesn't play h takes g, and I guess h takes g there might be knight f7. That might be just about, that might be okay for black. But actually Paul Morphy plays bishop takes g5. And we see bishop f6. And now not taking on h6, which might be fine as well, but actually he plays queen d2, just keeping all the pressure on without any sort of counterplay from black. That's taken. hg, the knight is allowed to stumble back. But now, you know, okay, a piece down, but you know, he's got these f and h files to play with. He actually just snaps off that knight, plays queen f4 check, and simply just castles now, threatening the crude, you know, mate in one. Black defends. Knight c3. Black is now faced with knight d5 to f6. So c6 to stop the knight coming to d5. Rook a e1. And you might think, well, is white's plan potentially to play e5 for knight e4 to f6? That looks effective. But actually, after the move d6, this is a nice move, which if you play things like the Smith-Morra Gambit, you would look out for moves like this, forcing moves. What does white play in this position? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. This is a cute one. Nice forcing move. Anyone? What would you play? A nice forcing move here. You actually picked up my clue of the Smith-Morra Gambit player in the game. You picked up my clue. Okay, so yes, knight d5, knight d5. Wow. So the idea is, you know, this rook's kind of stranded at the moment. These guys are still sitting there sunbathing. So c takes d5, e takes d5, and the rooks are just blasting down here. The queen's got to defend f7 and f8, and it's overloaded actually. The black queen in this position, if I take away these arrows, is actually overloaded. How on earth does the black queen defend this position? Can't. This extra knight and bishop is too late. Black tries queen g7, of course missing, well, allowing rook e8 check, end of game. Crashing through. So what were the elements again? Quick development, quick central control. Whatever gambit is played, if he's playing against the gambit or with the gambit, he gets good central control. A small investment of the knight was made, but then, you know, he's prepared to also give up what you'd think is a useful attacking piece, which is a bit paradoxical. The attacking players, you like to think of attacking generally as keeping the attacking bishops, but Paul knows when to give up the bishops as well. If there's a clear forcing move sequence, this is a nice prelude to giving up the light square bishop. the job can be done with the rest of the pieces. So the rooks are together here, and you see the opponent's rooks away, disconnected, and this e file is just blasted through with knight d5. If the queen had stepped anywhere else, then knight f6 just looks terrible. Anyway, that doesn't bear thinking about. Yeah, just win the queen if nothing else. So the rooks blasting their way through there. Crushing. Now I wonder if this is going to work. It's a without a rook game. I'm going to put this PGN, hoping the start fen is going to be taken by this software, and no, it isn't. Oh, that's a shame. Try that again. Actually, I'll put the fen on the same line. Nope. Hang on a sec. Try once more. Will this work? Yes! Aha! Aha! See this? No white rook. Unfortunately, there's no name for the opponent as well. It's NN. So how can Morphy win without the rook here? Let's have a look at this. So e4, e5. He still plays the King's Gambit. Okay. So f4. He plays the King's Gambit. I don't know. That's bishop c4 though. Not knight f3. Inviting the check. King f1. g5. Knight c3. Bishop g7. d4. So this is mind over matter. Without the rook, does it matter so far? Knight f3. Queen h5. And now Paul Morphy plays knight d5, attacking c7. So black has done something that seems a bit risky here. That he has to move his king to protect c7. c3. Knight f6. Paul takes this on f. Oh, pardon me. Sorry, knight f6. Knight takes f6. Bishop takes. e5. Bishop g7. And now this is great stuff, I think, what we're about to see here, actually. So New Orleans 1856, this game. He plays h4. And after white is in this pin against the rook, but how does white after f6 solve that? Very simply now, to really threaten black in this position. What quiet little move would you play here if you were playing the King's Gambit, as you would in blitz games maybe? So what would you play here with white if I gave you 20 seconds starting from now? So your goal is to undermine this structure. Anyone? There's a very safe way of doing it. Okay, someone's mentioned King f2. I'm not sure that's an entirely safe way of doing this. It does protect the rook to threaten hg, but maybe g4 with g3 is unpleasant. So actually, just the move King g1 actually. King g1, because now we've got g4 less effectively, which is played. So white's threatening hg, protecting the rook. So g4. Karuzik, I remember this last round video on my channel. The last round, it was called, by this player called Karuzik. Was also a fantastic King's Gambit player. He was playing like this, moving King g1 and then threatening to undermine the structure. So okay, so g4, knight h2. And here there's a problem with this pin, because maybe if d6, white has e6, and we've still got this problem pin, or have we? Okay, so black actually plays f takes e5, knight takes g4, e takes d4, and black has had his structure totally obliterated there, with white now threatening this check. Rook f8, the check, very dangerous now. Queen e2 on this knight, the rook goes back, and now this looks as though there's not much air for the king. So can you see what white plays in this position if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? So white to play here plays what? Anyone? Okay, white plays knight e5. He's not even sacrificing the queen really, because the bishop's protecting it. But if the queen did leave, then we've got knight f7, mate. So this is big trouble for black. In fact, what does black do here, actually? What does black do? His queen's actually attacked as well. So this is pretty nasty stuff. There's not much black can do. He played this, allowing actually to be mated, smothered mate. Well, he was no name anyway. Okay, so let's go on to George Webley, which is the last game I'm showing you this evening. George Webley Medley. George Webb Medley. So, oh, hang on. What's happening here? Try this again. Okay, so e4 from Paul Morphy, and we get another King's Gambit. It's the rampant opening at the time. It's the King's Gambit at that time was like the Slav defense to today. So e takes f4, knight f3, and we see black playing g5. h4, undermining the structure straight away. g5, knight e5 this time. So, okay, black played knight f6, and now we've got bishop c4. George plays d5. Morphy takes this. Bishop d6, d4. This knight's a bit of a pain, really, and white's now threatening this pawn. The contortion move knight h5 is played. Knight c3, bishop f5, and now knight e2, challenging that f4 pawn again. Queen f6, knight takes f4, attacking also this knight now. Now, interestingly, I thought about this particular game after knight g3. It was a little bit of a surprise to see this move, and I have actually engine checked this game. I'm not entirely sure black played accurately against this move, but it was a very interesting move to see white play here. What do you think Paul Morphy played in this position if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? Anyone? Who dares say something? Come on. Would you move your rook? No one can find an attacking move here. No? It's interesting actually, dark square control, generally dark square control in Morphy games. Remember, as black he seems to get d4 as black sometimes, and as white he's lighting up these dark squares often. And here he plays a forcing move to get onto these dark squares. So he plays knight h5. What else? If he plays rook g1, then maybe, you know, this is getting a bit naughty after queen takes h4. So this knight h5 forks the knight and the queen. So we see knight takes h5 and good dark square control, if nothing else, with bishop g5 striking across these dark squares. And I thought really actually black might be able to survive with queen g7 here, queen g7, but white does get the chance then to like castle and put pressure on f5, and things could get very nasty for black. Maybe even a kind of exchange sack and then taking here, and it starts to get a bit nasty because we've still got this f file and nasty things can happen here. By the way, if knight takes d4, then we've got queen c8 check as well. So this knight h5 drives black back, gets dark square control with bishop g5, and this is an inferior move though, I believe, to queen g7, which is played bishop b4 check. So after c3, white I think is better now, queen d6. And Paul doesn't even, well, I think you can take this because check, you know, he's got the knight protecting the bishop, but he actually just castles. He's still attacking two bishops anyway. So one bishop is defended, and he doesn't bother taking this one. He now does this alpha exchange sack. Rook takes f5. Knight takes f5. This is quite brutal stuff, really. Queen takes g4, still leaving two pieces attacked. We see knight e7. And now, again, not bothering this bishop, he just plays rook e1. This looks like crushing on e7. Crushing stuff on e7. Black tries h5. Queen drops back to f3. Now threatening, of course, queen f7. That's forcing black into a contortion defensive move, rook h7. And he switches attack. He's got some dark square control going, and now he goes on to the light square attack, which is also is quite crushing here. Can you see what white plays in this position if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? So what would you play here? Right. Okay, he plays bishop b5 check. Now, let's see, if the king moves, as an example, we can't do much else apart from c6 and moving the king. Okay, let's go with king f8. I think this is too much after bishop takes e7. For example, this is nasty. Check. Ouch. And if king takes, it still looks pretty bad with knight g6. Check. And we get a nasty mate on e8 actually. So that's not too good to play king f8 probably. So King d8 doesn't seem to do much better, probably, because again, well, here knight takes f7 actually looks quite good. Take, threatening all sorts of things. That looks good enough. So here black plays c6 actually, which maybe black thinks is the lesser evil move. But white playing d takes, b takes, and now knight takes c6, and we've opened up now this diagonal as well against this rook. Knight takes, bishop takes, and black actually doesn't like losing the rook here, and also he could actually lose his queen as well. If the knight's pin, if king f8, maybe Morphy goes for the queen with bishop takes actually, and he's always staring at, well, he's always staring at, pardon me, this bishop is attacking that rook anyway, so we can just go for the queen and then take this rook after. So basically after bishop takes c6 check, black had enough. Black resigned here, but crushing, really crushing. So when he plays the King's Gambit, he really sorts out the central control, and he, you know, this h4 issue you might think is a bit of a pest, but it's quite resourceful, I think, to play this move knight h5, repulsing black's aggressive intentions, establishing dark square control, and black didn't play that accurately. Now rejecting materialism in favour of the king attack, which is so powerful here, is crumbling for black. Okay, I think there's definitely a consistent mixture of ingredients going on in these games, so I think they're instructive, even though, you know, a lot of them are not played with the greatest accuracy of defense. Hope you enjoyed this week. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much. See you next week.